Sorry about that, but I had to take my daughter to college, so we did that. But now we're back. Now we can get going on things here. Get started on this class. The 29th. Today we're supposed to cruise through chapter 1, and in the week past, you were supposed to do, you're supposed to register on ENGR1000. You were supposed to read a couple of articles and do some papers on those. I hope that you were able to get that done. Let's see here. Did you have any troubles with any of those assignments? Okay. I did receive some stuff in my email box, but I haven't graded it yet, so I'm not sure what I've got exactly. I just know somebody sent something in. Can you see my overhead projector there? Good. Okay, so anyway, we've got that assignment, the 2 different articles, which is at the top there. And then we've got this other assignment where we're going to watch 60 minutes of video. We're able to find 60 minutes of video about an engineering field. All right, and then a page typed report about that, including the videos that you watched. Okay, so anyway, that's what we did so far in this class, and now we're moving on to bookwork. Now we have bookwork this week and next week, and then we'll have an exam. So we're going to kind of be boring and in the classroom and doing stuff out of the book for a little while, typical kind of classroom stuff. We'll try to keep it as unboring as possible, but if it's out of a textbook, it's still going to be a little bit boring. But it's important stuff, so we'll kind of drudge through it and get it over with. And then we're going to get on to doing some project, our first project, which is the bridge project. Which means I got to send you guys kits out there. Let's see if I'm recording for everybody to hear this. Yes, I am. So, yeah, I've got to send you guys some kits. So make sure that you've sent me your address if you haven't already done that. Have you done that already? Okay. So if you've sent me your address, then this week I will be boxing up some materials and some tools and supplies for you and sending that out to you so you can get started on a project in a couple of weeks. And then we will go back to the book for chapter 5. Then we will go back to a project and then back to the book for just a short time for chapter 6. And then after that, it'll just be project after project after project after project. And I think that you'll find the class a little more exciting and engaging from then on out. So, any questions before we get started covering chapter 1? Okay, what's up? Yes, I did. I did get your email, and I just answered it. But from what I can tell, I've never seen edition 1. But from what I read online, it's the only difference is that edition 2 has chapter 1 in it, which is called Preparing to be an Engineer. And your book doesn't have that. Your book doesn't have a chapter titled Preparing to be an Engineer, does it? Okay, so I think that's the only difference. Let's go through the chapters really quick and figure this out. So chapter 2 in my book is the engineer. What is an engineer? The need for engineering and stuff like that. Engineer is a problem solver. Then chapter 3 is engineering ethics. Is that your chapter 2? And then I've got a chapter 4, which is problem solving. But except we're not doing problem solving, so it doesn't matter. We're going to skip to chapter 5. Your chapter 4 should be Introduction to Design. You got that? And then chapter 6, which is Engineering Communications. Okay, so I think that you could go ahead and use that book, but what we want to do every time we work in the book is we want to make sure you have the homework assignment correct. We want to make sure your homework problems at the back of your chapters match mine. And for chapter 1, I'm just going to have to send you the homework problems. So what I'll do is I will let's see, what's the best way to do this? I think maybe the most sure way to do this is I'm just going to zoom in on the homework problems here so that you can watch the video and just write these down when you get the video. And then I will also try to scan it and email it to you, so I'll try to remember that. But here are the homework problems 1 through 8, and I can't remember what I assigned. Let's take a look at what I assigned. Looks like I assigned for chapter 1, problems 1 through 6 and 9 through 11. So here are your 1 through 6 problems, preparing a list of short-range goals and self-inventory list of strengths and weaknesses. And essentially this is just kind of self-reflection to help you to decide that you're ready to do engineering. And it's very important because engineering is going to require a lot of you as a student. And then the 9 through 11 are here, where you're doing similar things, brief description on, a brief report on the effects of lack of sleep. And these things, I don't want you to just write down what you think about them. I want, for these homework for this particular homework assignment in particular, I want you to go out and do some research on this and cite some sources. So you might write a half a page or a page on what is bad about lack of sleep, or if you find something good about lack of sleep, whatever. I want you to go and find some information, and I want you to write a report about that and tell me what you learned about lack of sleep. But then a brief report on the health benefits of exercise, latest thinking about healthy diet, a list of, no, you don't, then I didn't ask you to do 12 or 13. So, 9, 10, and 11, and then 1 through 6, which are mostly about kind of self-reflection, self-inventory, checking out, kind of what you do in your life and how you can prepare to be an engineer. Because really, engineering is about a frame of mind as much as it is about learning the material and understanding how to be an engineer. Living the engineering lifestyle is quite important for an engineer because they have to be well organized, they have to communicate effectively, they have to be this kind of person that does these things. And it doesn't necessarily have to come naturally to you, but if it's not natural to you, you have to learn it. You have to become that kind of a person. And the best way I've probably ever heard it said was when I actually spent a lot of time in my life coaching different sports, and I've been very successful at it, but maybe not as successful as I could have been, because I was listening to one of the most successful coaches in one of my favorite sports, which is men's volleyball, and I was listening to him talk about what makes him successful and his team successful. And essentially what it came down to was the things that he asked his athletes to do were already a part of his life. They'd either come naturally as a part of his life, or he had created them as part of his life. He had made them a part of his life, including things like being organized, being committed, being a hard worker, giving everything that you can give, leaving it all on the floor, all those things that you hear people talk about. It's important that you live those things as a player, as a coach, as an engineer, whatever else. You can't just say them. They can't just be they can't just be sound bites in your life. They have to be part of who you are every day. And so as engineers, we're going to look at a lot of the traits that engineers have, so that we can start working on making them a part of our lives, because it's just as important a part of your education as anything else is, especially if you want to be truly successful. Any other questions or concerns besides the book? Okay, well, let's get started. I am going to have the book open here on the overhead projector for much of the time while I'm teaching. There's two reasons for that. First of all, I don't want to miss anything, so I want to have it in front of me. Second of all, I don't want to teach from a separate thing that is not what you're going to see when you go to your book. And so, not exclusively. A lot of teachers like to have, overhead slides or, PowerPoint slides, whatever else. But sometimes I've learned and observed that those things don't really connect to the book all that effectively, not very seamless connections. So students get confused when they see what they see in lecture or in the classroom is different from what they're seeing in the book. And I don't want that to happen. So I will have it open here, except when I want to show you something else in particular. And I'm assuming that you're seeing both my book and me here a little bit. Are you seeing me as well? No? Yes? You are, okay. Okay, so from time to time I might write something on the whiteboard back here for you to see, and I'll try to zoom in on it so you can see it a little bit better if I do. And then from time to time I'll also show something on the computer for you to see. But let's go ahead and talk about these different sections here. Right here they have this great quote at the top. Toto, I have a feeling we're not in Kansas anymore. And I can guarantee you, you're going to have that feeling of being in an alien world when you get to college. I don't know if you've ever seen the original Wizard of Oz. If you haven't, you should. It's a great movie, one of the best movies ever made, and the most successful movie ever made in the box office. But it is really that way, where you're in a place that is completely different. Things are happening that you've never even considered or thought about, and it can be disorienting. It can be confusing. It can be disturbing, unfortunately, and it can be really disheartening in a lot of ways. It causes all kinds of distress. It causes all kinds of depression. It can create a lot of trouble. There's more than we'd like to talk about. Problems with things like chronic depression and suicide and other terrible things going on in college because of this reason. And so we want to kind of prepare you for that, at least as much as we can from an engineering standpoint. Engineers usually have a different experience than English majors, and English majors have a different experience than math majors, and math majors have a different experience from whatever, physical education majors, whatever. Everybody has a different experience, so we're going to give you as much information as we can about the engineering experience and help to prepare you for this so it's not so much of a shock. Usually, engineers, when they're in high school, are taking tough classes. Usually, they're among the top students in their high schools. Sometimes, they are considered the brightest student in their high school, and it's not uncommon. When you get into college, you're going to be with a group of people who are all that way. You will be among all of the valedictorians and all of the top 5% of their class, maybe even top 1% of their class, and everything else. And it's not uncommon to be kind of shocked by that, kind of maybe a little bit depressed by that, because I can tell you my own experience. I had one of the top scores on every test in my high school. There were maybe 5 kids in the high school that had scores as high as I did. Even the valedictorian at my high school didn't have better scores than I did on the SAT and the ACT. In fact, hers were quite a bit lower than mine. I know because I was dating her. Anyway, this is not uncommon. This is the group of people from every high school that you'll be working with in engineering, because many of those kids go into engineering or science or something similar, and so will be in similar classes with you at a similar level as you are. And that can be a bit daunting. Sometimes you're going to be, not even sometimes, you're guaranteed to meet people who scored perfect on the SAT, which is nearly impossible, and perfect on the ACT, which is nearly impossible, and had perfect grades and traveled to Europe on some kind of scholarship or something for brilliant people, and people, it's just going to happen. And so you have to kind of put on a humility hat when you get into college, as an engineer in particular, because it's not going to be the same as high school. You are not going to be on top of the world anymore. There will always be somebody smarter than you. And you're also on the other side of things. The flip side of that is that in the engineering department, engineering professors, and in other science departments in general, these professors have a tendency to know that. They know that they're teaching some of the brightest kids coming out of high school, and some of the most promising minds coming out of high school. And they will treat you that way. That can be an up and a down. Sometimes they're going to expect a heck of a lot more from you than your friend who's in recreation management. Your friend in recreation management is going to be playing in the sports leagues for students, whatever they call those intramural student play. He's going to be playing intramural basketball and baseball and going to clubs and doing whatever they want to do all the time while you're still just getting your first homework from your first class done, and you still have 3 other classes. Okay? And so it's going to be a little bit frustrating because more is going to be expected of you, but also there's going to be an interesting relationship that you may have not seen. Maybe you have, maybe you haven't, but you may not have recognized before. You're going to be treated more like a peer as your professors start to probe you for your skills and your abilities. And when they start to realize how smart you are and know that you're capable of these things, they're going to start to treat you more like a peer. I guarantee you that before too long, you will have professors that are going to be asking you to call them by their first names and not call them Dr. So-and-so or Professor so-and-so because they're going to consider you an intellectual peer, and they're going to be wanting you to join in their research group, and they're going to be wanting you to do this and that and the other because they want to further your career, because that's going to help their career. It's going to help science and engineering in general. They're going to want to use you as a resource in the future and give you opportunities to grow. So ups and downs to all of this. There's a lot of ups and downs. But you do have to develop a lot of things in your life, and that's what this first section in the chapter is about. You must develop basic living skills, and I love these comics that they put in here. This one's by Zitz. So let's zoom in on this and take a look at this great comic strip. Okay. So this first one says, "It is so unfair of you to make me do my own laundry. None of my friends have to do their own laundry. I'll bet Amnesty International would love to hear from a teenager who is forced to do his own laundry." And then later on it says, "I do my own laundry now. That is so amazingly mature of you," his mother says. No, that's his girlfriend, right? So this is the classic thing, right, for kids. You know, parents force them to do things, but the kids do usually recognize the value of it, at least to their girlfriend who, to show them they're cool. "I do my own laundry." You probably won't hear that one, but you might hear, "I live in my own apartment now," or "I pay my own bills now," or "I have my own job now," or whatever it is. But really this is what we're trying to do. We're trying to get you to do things that maybe you've never thought of as being important, that are extremely important, and to recognize their importance right off, right? So one of the first things is to overcome defeats and obstacles. Now this again is something that a lot of students going into engineering have never really experienced. Okay, now I can tell you again right away from my experience, I never had to do anything in high school. I never did homework hardly. I mean, really homework for me was a time to get together with a few of my friends and screw around because we had homework study time. And I had a girlfriend and a friend who were so intense about doing all of their homework and everything else. And I could care less because I didn't have to do the homework to learn the material. The material was easy. But my girlfriend wanted to be valedictorian, and my other friend wanted to be valedictorian. They both wanted to be valedictorian, my best friend and my girlfriend. And I didn't want to be valedictorian, I didn't care. So I just never did my homework. I just kind of hung out. It wasn't a problem. I just did everything. It was easy. And, I kind of skated through high school. I got really great scores on exams. I did fair to partly cloudy on my homework. And I got, I think I graduated with a 3.0 or a 2.9 or something like this. But my scores on my tests were so high that I got into a top-tier university, and I was happy. My first day at the university, I fell flat on my face because I was taking classes now that were way harder than I'd ever imagined they could be. Because all of a sudden they're expecting so much more of me, and they're teaching it so much faster and at such a higher level of comprehension. And I just literally fell flat on my face. By the end of my first semester, I had a 2.0, and my second semester was like a 1.7, and I was just dying my first year of college. And again, that's not uncommon in fields of engineering and science, because students generally have an easy time in high school. Now, the fact that you're trying to take college classes hopefully shows that you're trying to challenge yourself, and that's great. Unfortunately, this is not a very challenging class, but I'm going to talk to you about those challenges, which is the next best thing. But you have to learn to fail, and you have to learn to have major defeats in school. And you have to learn to get depressed. But most importantly, you have to learn to overcome those things. And I did it the hard way by essentially being on academic probation after my first year and recovering from that years later. I didn't go back to college for 4 years because I hated my experience so much. But after those 4 years, I went back with a plan to become a better student. I also went back married to a girl who was a very good student, and she helped me become a very good student. So, but that's actually really relevant, because if you struggle with something, for example, if you struggle with making a schedule for yourself, with writing things down on a calendar and sticking to a schedule. This is when I'm going to study. This is when I'm going to go play baseball. This is when I'm going to meet with a study group. This is when I'm going to do this, that, and the other. If you struggle with that particular skill, you should find somebody who knows how to do it. Or you should get on YouTube and watch some videos on how to do it. And you should implement a plan to get that into your personality. Because those things are important. They are essential when you get to college in an engineering program. You will need skills like that. So, let's see here. That takes us to 1.1.3. Let's go to 1.1.4. Another thing that we talk about a lot when we send kids off to school is money. Money, right? The big thing now is to go off to a big university and borrow some money and have student loans and just say to yourself, well, it's okay, it's like free money. For an engineer, it's not a terrible idea because most engineers are going to make enough money to pay that off in the end anyway. You could rack up, $50,000, $100,000 worth of student loans as an engineer, and you will be able to pay it off with a good job, because you will get a good job if you finish your engineering degree, and you'll be able to pay that off in 20 or 30 years and be fine. And it won't really tax you very much. But I wouldn't recommend it if you can get around it. I would recommend that you get away from as many loans as possible. I did take out some loans as a student. I took out mostly as a graduate student and later in my education, because later in my education I had 5 kids, and I had 2 kids that had some pretty major medical bills that I had to pay, and I used my student loans to pay for medical insurance and to pay some medical bills. And so I ended up with, I think, $55,000 or almost $60,000 in student loans. It has been 10 years since I left college, and we have paid more than the minimum balance on those loans every month, and I still have about $40,000 left to pay on that loan. A little bit more, I think a little bit more than $40,000. And so I'm on track to pay that off. But that is $350, I think, or $375 a month that I'm paying off on. That's like a car payment, a good car payment, not a junky car payment. That is a house payment almost. If you bought a decent sized, kind of smallish, new, kind of newly married, 2 bedrooms, 1 bath kind of house in North Platte, that's about what it would cost you every month to pay for that house if you bought it. So that's significant. That's a month's worth of groceries for, a small family. It's significant. It doesn't really kill me every month. I am able to make enough money to not be hurt by it very much at all. But I definitely notice it. I'd love to have an extra $350 a month just to do whatever I want with, put into savings, and go on a trip with my wife, whatever. You can do a lot of things with $350 in a lump cash. If my student loan had been up to $100,000, it would be closer to $700, $800, even $1,000 a month. And it is not uncommon for students to come out of school even after just 4 years with $100,000 in loans. because it's like free money. They'll hand you up to like, I think right now they'll hand you up to $15,000 interest free without even having to. I mean, you don't have to do anything except go to class. $15,000 a semester or a year or something like that. That's insane. And you can get more if you go outside the government. It's really kind of bad. It's a big business for these companies, these banks that loan the money. And they don't care what your major is. They don't care if you need the money or not. Students will take out these loans and they'll say, well, I'll just pay it back, and then they'll buy a car with it, which is actually technically not legal. But they'll go buy a car with it, or they'll go on a vacation with it, or they'll just save it. And all those things are actually not legal to do with this money, but people do it all the time. And then they end up spending it somehow, and then at the end of their 4 years, they've got, $85,000 debt, $115,000 in debt. And they didn't even use it really for their education. So how do we manage this? How do we prevent this from happening? Well, first of all, we look at resources. First of all, the first place to look is your family. Your family probably has some resources. They can help you out. Your mom and dad are probably willing to help you out. You need to figure out who's willing to help you out with school and how much, specifically. Write it down. And make sure that you know who's going to help you with what. Maybe your parents are willing to help you pay for your housing, but not for your food. And maybe your grandpa would be willing to give you some money for books, $100 or something. $100 will buy you half a textbook nowadays. Whatever. But to get that money and to get an account, set up an account, and start budgeting that money. So far, I've got this much for my textbooks, this much for my housing, this much for my tuition. And then the most important thing of all, get a job. Even minimum wage, a few hours a week for a few years will make you enough money for tuition for any Nebraska university, public university, for a year or 2 years. And when you get up to college, get a job. A lot of students think, I don't want a job while I'm in college because I want to have I want to have plenty of time to do my homework. Right? What happens if you have free time as a college student? Do you do your homework? No. You go play, because that's what you do. And you'll always have a little free time to go and play. So you might as well fill up a little bit of that free time with something useful and get a job. Get a job on campus. And in engineering, you have a great resource right in the engineering department. You can go around the engineering department and talk to professors and say, I am interested in doing research. And it's almost guaranteed you will find somebody who's willing to start you off in research, even as a freshman, and they're going to bring you into your lab and they're going to hand you a broom. They're going to say, clean the lab. And that's going to be your first job. But in a year or two, you're going to be cleaning optics, or you're going to be adjusting a piece of machinery, or you're going to be testing something, or you might be actually doing computer programming or something else. They're going to teach you what you need to know to be a good researcher, because they want to train students to become researchers, because it's almost like free labor for them. And almost all those professors have a ton of money sitting in their coffers to just pay students to do jobs, just to pay them to do things in their lab. So go around and look for a job. Be very forward, be very open, jump out there and meet those teachers and get some opportunities available for you. You can do the same thing in high school. If you're interested in engineering or some other similar field, you can go down to the city and see if the city hires an engineer and see if they'd be willing to hire you as an intern. Or if there's a company in your town. For example, out in Broken Bow, there's the medical company BD that makes a lot of medical supplies. And they're essentially just a factory. And they hire interns. You can go out there and work as an intern and get some internship credit and also get paid. There's lots of opportunities with the railroad. There's lots of opportunities with the power companies and other things. So look for opportunities to work even in engineering, even when you're young. But get a job. Get out there and work. Sign up for scholarships. There are hundreds of scholarship sites out there. Let's go take a look at that. That's important. We might end up spilling over onto Wednesday for chapter 1, but that's okay. We don't mind doing that. I'm going to move my camera so you can see my screen here. Let's see, camera. That's the wrong way. Looking out the window. There we go. Oops. There we go. Okay, so here's my, that's the wrong screen, but we'll get you on the right screen here. Okay, so here's my computer screen. Hopefully you'll be able to see. Can you see that? Okay, so my computer screen, and let's search for scholarships. Have you ever signed up for a scholarship online? Okay, which website do you use? Okay, so here's FastWeb right here, yeah. And here's scholarships.com, which is a pretty good one actually. Studentscholarships.org. I've never seen that one. Let's take a look at it. So usually what it is, and this is probably what you've seen, is that you log in, you register, and then you put in your interests, right? And then you go ahead and you find, they'll send you an email or something with scholarships. Is that how it works? Yeah. And I would sign up on a few different sites. Maybe do a search for the best scholarship websites or something. But this one is actually, looks like it's giving me just a web search online of student scholarships. Engineering scholarships, that's nice and loud. No worries. So here's an interesting one, the Buick Achievers Scholarship. Here's ones that are specific to particular universities. Shell Oil Corporation. And just start looking at these scholarships, and anyone that you can apply for, that you qualify for, you might as well apply for it. And what it means in the end is that you will spend your junior and senior year applying for scholarships probably 2 or 3 nights a week for a couple of hours each night, and just writing scholarship application after scholarship application after scholarship application. And my daughter hated it. She hated it, hated it, hated it. But in the end, she ended up getting half of her tuition paid for. Right? So that's what makes it worth it. I knew kids that were so successful at it that they ended up with $10,000 in scholarship money left over after they paid their tuition and their books and their housing. And legally in the United States, when you have leftover scholarship money, you can put that in your bank and use it for anything you want. You have to pay taxes on it as well. But legally, that money is yours to do with as you please. And so I had a friend that got his pilot's license and his helicopter license and went on like 18 ski trips a year with his scholarship money. He had $10,000 and he was just having a ball in college. So apply for as many as you possibly can. Scholarships and grants. Also get in and fill out your FAFSA form. As a senior, you should get that filled out pretty soon, pretty quickly, so that you can start to see if you're going to have grants available to you. And usually the FAFSA has to be filled out and sent directly to the college that you're applying to, or colleges that you're applying to, so that they can tell you what you are going to qualify for. And as a student, I qualified for pretty much, my tuition was paid every year by grants, and I got several scholarships every year that helped me pay for other things. And it was really quite nice. I mean, like I said, I wasn't the best student in the world, but I still qualified for a lot of stuff and got a lot of aid through school. So some of these scholarships are going to be need-based, some of them are going to be merit-based, grades-based, some of them are going to be based on something else, some of them are going to have a mixture of things that they're based on. So read through them, decide if you're qualified or not, and if you are even remotely qualified, fill out the form and turn it in. Something that not many students are aware of. Most communities have scholarships available for students. Are you aware of any scholarship opportunities in your community? Okay, so oftentimes you can find out what those are through your high school. Oftentimes you can find them out through counselors or principals or teachers. But also there are often businesses out there in the community. So it never hurts to just send out an email or a letter, or just stop by businesses and ask them if they have a scholarship. I know for a fact that Shopco does scholarships, so if you have a Shopco in or near your town, they do that. I think that there's a hardware store, maybe Ace or Orshelms or something like that, that has scholarship that's available. So go out and find out what those are, and sign up for them. See if you can apply for them and maybe get considered for a scholarship for those. Look for those opportunities anywhere that you can. The Rotary clubs in different towns. Rotary clubs in different towns often have scholarships and other different kinds of adult clubs where they get together and spend each other's money or whatever. So those often have scholarships as well. Look for those. Keep your eye open for those. Ask your parents, ask your grandparents, ask your friends, uncles, if they know of anything like that, because they're going to be involved in those things and they will know. Look for them everywhere you can. And I recommend you start looking in your junior year, towards the end of your junior year, and all through your senior year as you are planning to get started with college. Okay, so that is about how we find money. Now, how are we going to manage money? Well, as they often say, there's an app for that. And that's a great thing about today. Money management apps. If you search on Google for money management apps, you're going to find a QuickBooks inventory. QuickBooks is a big company, of course. There's I don't want incident management, better task management, scheduling software. Mint.com. Mint.com is a money management app. Here's a website that has a list of all the top money management apps. Let's go take a look at them really quick. Mint, which is free for iPhone and Android. Check, which is free for iPhone and then they have BillGuard, which is free. They have Level Money, which is free. LearnVest. They're all free even. I mean, that's great. So you download this app, and then you learn how to use it, and you use it to manage your money, right? Now, what am I listening to? Oh, that's the computer. It's totally off. Turn off computer. Okay, so using an app to manage your money is one thing. Finding money for college is another thing. But actually figuring out a way to organize your money, that is a completely different thing. And let's take a look at how we can do that. A couple of different ways we can do that on my overhead projector. Okay, so, and we will look into this a little bit more from an engineering standpoint, but for now I'm just going to look at it from a personal money management standpoint, and mostly drawing from my own experience. Most people, when they think of making a budget, they think of, hey, I made $500, here's my $500, and at the end of the month I'm going to look at all the money I spent and I'm going to say, oh, I had $100 that I put into savings, and so I'm going to check that off, check, and I spent $200 on food, and I'm going to say check, and they just kind of write down. It's kind of like just putting stuff into their checkbook. They're just writing down what they did. And that is unfortunately what most people do when they budget, quote unquote, or when they manage their money. This is a very ineffective way to manage your money, because what you'll usually find out is that you did $100 in savings, $200 in food, another $200 in gas, and then there was $387 in your credit card. And so your balance for that paycheck is negative $387, right? Which we usually write in big red numbers, because now you're in debt. And being in debt is just not smart, especially if you know anything about math. Because when you're in debt, you're paying people to use money, but when you are saving money and investing money, people are paying you to use your money. And you'd much rather be paid to do something than to pay to do something. So, what they say is that people that understand interest earn it, and people who don't pay it, right? So let's be the people who understand interest and earn it. So when you get a $500 paycheck, the first thing you should always do is make a record of that $500 somewhere and decide what you're going to do with it before you do anything with it. Okay? So for me personally, when I've got my $500, one of the first things that I do is I make donations to my church and other organizations that I like to support, and I like to make that a priority. And so let's say that I'm going to set aside $75 for helping people in my community do good things. I'm going to call that donations. And I'm going to make a category that I'm going to call donations, and I'm going to put it in a column here. I'll maybe write donations at the top or something like this, right? $75 for donations. And then I've subtracted that 75 from my total up here, 500, right? And then maybe I'm going to put in 150, or let's do 175. Then I'll put that in another category that I'm going to call living. That's going to pay for my house, on all the things that I have to do to my house. You know, I have to pay for my electricity and my plumbing and everything else, and my rent or whatever I have to pay for. So I'm going to call it living, and whenever I pay for something for my house, it's going to come out of there. And then I'm going to pay for food. It's going to come out of here, and it's going to be, let's say that I can get off on $100 of food every month. I can get by with that. And then let's say that in another category for gas for my car, maybe I'll just call this car, because this will be gas and anything I need to fix on my car every month. Let's say I put in, let's put in another $100 there. And then miscellaneous over here, I'll just call the X category. I'm going to put in another $100. And then I add this up and I see what I've got. 100, 200, 300. And then I've got 250 here, so I've got 350. That means I've got to change one of these categories. And usually what I'll do is I'll go to this miscellaneous category and cut that down until it fits. So $50, and now this all adds up to $500. And then as I go through and spend things, I take it out of each category when I spend it. So let's say that I go ahead and pay $50 to my church to help them help the poor, help them turn on the lights at the church or whatever else. Then I subtract that $50 and I've got now $25 left there. And then my living, I pay my rent, and my rent's $125, so I subtract that off there and I've got $50 left here. And I just do that, and maybe even I write a date when I do it over here, and I keep track of it. This would be a very simple budget, but the ideas are all there. You want to decide where you're going to spend your money, how you're going to spend your money, and then kind of put it into some categories, how much you're going to spend in each of those categories, and then you want to track your spending as you go. Because when you get to zero in a particular category, you need to stop spending money on your car. Okay? And then the next month, you can maybe put a little bit extra money in that category so you don't have to stop driving your car. Or maybe it helps you realize how much money you're spending driving, and you start to think about driving so much. You know, if I only have to drive 4 blocks to get to school, or maybe even only a quarter mile to get to school, maybe it's worth it for me to walk. Because then I don't have to pay for that gym membership that costs me $50 a month, and I can save money on gas and gym membership. Okay? When they say a penny saved is a penny earned, they're not kidding. Because a penny saved becomes a few pennies when you put interest on it 20 years down the road. And people have a hard time fathoming this. They have a hard time understanding this. But this is how it works. If you've got $100,000 right now and put it in a bank account for 25 years in a long-term banking account, a long-term investment account essentially, how much do you think that'd be worth in 20 years? Most people think, I don't know, a couple $100,000, maybe $300,000. But it's actually closer to $500,000. It's actually closer to 400,000+. Okay? It's a huge change because the interest rates, right now the interest rates are really low, but the interest rates will be very high again because they will go up and down. And then that interest compounds. You get interest on top of interest on top of interest, and over 25 years, it makes a huge difference. And I've known people that have gotten $100,000 all at once from, maybe they inherited it from their grandparents, or maybe they got it in a lawsuit settlement because they got in an accident somewhere. And they've just blown it. They've bought an expensive car or something crazy like that. And then that money was gone. And they could have put it in a high interest account, And in 25 years, when they were, maybe 50 or 55 or 60, they could have had $500,000 to retire on. They could have just left the workforce and done whatever they wanted. So a penny saved is a penny earned in a big way, especially if you start to invest it. Another thing that people don't understand is how much this adds up if you just put in a little at a time. If you're 18 years old and you put in $25 a month into a retirement account, and you do that until you're 60, you're going to get about $500,000 in your account. If you wait till you're 25 and do that, $25 a month, it's going to be about $300,000. You're going to lose out on about $200,000 just by waiting 7 years till you're 25. If you wait till you're 35, it's going to be more like $100,000. Okay? The interest matters. The interest makes a huge difference, on the order of hundreds of thousands. And the time makes a difference, the longer you do things like this. So I would recommend things like saving money wherever you can, budgeting, opening up a retirement account. Go down and talk to somebody at the bank and ask them, what's the best retirement account for me to open right now as an 18-year-old kid? And they'll tell you, it's probably going to be a Roth IRA. You can open it up and just put a little bit of money in it every month and save up money tax-free for the rest of your life and end up a millionaire when you retire, no matter how much money you made while you were working. So those kinds of things are huge, and I would definitely look into them right away and start doing them. Learn how to budget right away. Try to ask your parents how they budget. Ask them to teach you how to budget. Whatever. Ask a teacher at your school. Okay, that takes us through the last, until we have two more sections in this section 1 here. Getting along with people, which is of course always important, but especially important if you're trying to sell them something, which engineers are often trying to do. Okay? Unfortunately for me, it's not something I'm all that great at, because I'm kind of passionate and I'm kind of overbearing at times. It's something that I'm still learning at the age of 42. But I do encourage my students to learn it as early as they possibly can. And it involves a lot of different skills, including things like keeping your mouth shut and just listening to people. And when you say things, to say them in a very measured manner, right? But it is also something that you can learn by observation. Go and observe people like politicians. Politicians, when they're actually in office and they're not trying to get into office, are usually some of the best people to look at for this. That's probably why I'm not very good at it, because I always hated politicians. But they are very good examples of this. Politicians and news anchors and other, let's see, who else is very good at this? Well, politicians and news anchors are probably the ones that I can think of right off the top of my head that are good at this. Go and look how they respond to people. Look how they respond to situations that are stressful, or when people are being angry or whatever else. They have a tendency to be very calm and collected and to try to diffuse situations and to try to get people to talk about the important stuff. And that is extremely important. And then staying healthy. Right? They've got some great comics about staying healthy, and there's lots of those out there. But staying healthy includes sleeping, includes proper eating. Those are the two things that college students struggle with a lot, more than anything else. Sleeping and eating. College students want to stay up late, and they want to get up late. The human body is designed to sleep when it is dark and to wake up when it is light. Anytime you break away from that cycle and stay up much past dark and get up much past light, it messes with your brain. And your brain is not as useful as it could be. And there are people that will argue this until, forever. But it is a plain, proven fact that the brain works best and the body works best because the body works from the brain. If you go to bed shortly after dark and you wake up right about when it's light. So you get a good average of 8 hours of sleep a night. Of course, in the wintertime, it's darker longer and the daytime is shorter, and so people will generally stay up a little bit later and maybe get up a little bit before the sun, and that's perfectly fine. But the general rule of thumb is that you should get between 7 and 9 hours of sleep, and if you're too much or too little, the brain does not work properly. The synchronicity of the brain isn't quite right. The brain isn't getting its downtime that it needs, and if the brain doesn't get its downtime, the body is not getting its downtime. You can't just rest on a couch awake, because when you're awake, your body is doing all kinds of things that you don't even know it's doing. When your brain turns off and goes into the deep REM cycles, it actually shuts down things in the body. It shuts down things that are happening during the day so that they're not happening at night, and you burn less calories. Everything gets relaxed much more. So it's necessary. Now eating, again, very, very vital. And it is a well-known fact in all circles that eating somewhere between 3 and 5 meals a day is the best for human beings. And you just kind of have to figure out what works for you. Some people do better with more smaller meals. Some people do better with fewer, slightly bigger meals. But if you do 1 meal a day because you think that's all you have time for, the body just doesn't do that very well. It doesn't know how to use that energy very, very efficiently. Because the body has to store the energy in between meals. And if it has to store it for too long, it puts it into fat, and fat is hard to burn, so it's hard to get that energy back. But if it doesn't have enough time to store it, then your body is constantly digesting food, and then you have a problem with you don't have energy available to you readily because you're digesting rather than using. And so you have to kind of decide on that. It's particularly a problem with freshman students who are going into a dorm situation where they have all-you-can-eat food. And they get in there in the morning and they eat, chocolate Cocoa Puffs for, 5 bowls of that for breakfast. And you've got all this sugar in their system. And then they go off to class and they can't sit still. And then, they come at lunchtime and they eat 9 slices of pizza and a gallon of chocolate milk or whatever. You got to make some good choices and eat sensibly. Eat those things your parents made you eat when you were a kid. And indulge yourself just every once in a while. So that is all we've got to say about getting ready to enter this crazy world of engineering in college for the first section. We will come back on Wednesday and cover the next few sections before we move on to the next chapter. So go ahead and get started on the homework, and then we will get back to it on Wednesday, and we'll see you then. Yep.